Attention, please. Before we begin our meal and have our invocation, I think it's important that each and every one of us recognize our inductees as they come into the room. This is the 11th Hall of Fame dinner, and it's wonderfully attended by so many people. The first inductee is the Special Achievement Award given to a man who has done so much for the town of Dartmouth, Mr. Wally Farias Sr. One of the finest basketball players that Dartmouth High School ever had, and as my good friend Dean Freitas said, if he had played in the 80s and the 90s, he'd have probably scored 3,000 points, Mr. Jim Nunes. One of the finest women athletes in Dartmouth High School history, and in Mrs. Lack's opinion, one of the top 5 she's ever had, Mrs. Pamela Gardner Mayo. It's a great honor to introduce not only a great athlete, a great teacher, and a great colleague, Beth Brooks Ogwin. The last 2 inductees I know very well, 2 of the finest football players I ever had the privilege to coach. First of all, the class of 1984, Mr. Michael McGuire. In the class of 1986, last but not least, a great athlete, a great competitor, Jerry Pimentel. At this time, I'd like to call on Monsignor Thomas Harrington, the pastor of Holy Name Parish, one of the finest clergymen in the era who loves sports a great deal, Red Sox fan, patriot, and a protege of Father John Hogan, who was our unofficial chaplain for the Dartmouth High School athletic teams. And so it's a great honor for me to introduce our chaplain of the night, Monsignor Harrington.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Coach Lynch. And I looked in the booklet, and I saw right inside the front cover a list of names. Coach Lynch has just mentioned Doc Freitas and those other names. Just for a moment before we even begin, why don't we have a moment of silence for those good people? And now, come with me, won't you, into the presence of God, the God of our understanding. In the Christian scriptures, in the New Testament we call it, St. Paul writes of the challenges of life in terms of competition. I fought the good fight, he wrote. I've run the race. I finished the course. And now the Lord, just judge that he is, will award me the crown of glory. For it is in the crucible of competition that we come to know the joy of victory and the agony of defeat. We learn to cultivate the talents with which you've all been endowed by our Creator. And we learn to prevail with integrity and to lose, as all we must at times, with dignity. So thank you, Heavenly Father of us all, for affording us the opportunity to enrich our lives with competition. We hold in grateful memory the events, and most especially the persons with whom in your providence you have allowed us to engage. May future generations in this community find their lives enriched by the same experiences. May the heritage of past generations serve to inspire and guide them. Thank you for this evening, Heavenly Father, for the fraternity that we shall share, the good food we shall enjoy. Bless us, O Lord, and all the gifts we are privileged to enjoy from your wonderful bounty. Amen. God bless.
Well, please enjoy our meal, and we'll get on with the festivities as soon as we finish. Before we get into our induction ceremony with our inductees, I would like to call on a few people just to share a few thoughts with us. The first gentleman I'd like to call upon is our retiring superintendent, Dr. Thomas Kelly, who we had the good fortune of being at one time one of our football coaches at Dartmouth High School, and I also had the good fortune to coach him at Holy Cross College, a true Hall of Famer at Holy Cross, an All-American baseball player and a great football player, and a real true friend of athletics who understands the real meaning of it. And during the time we had Proposition 2.5 where children had to pay to play, he was very generous in his ideas of making it at least costly as possible for our student athletes. So I'd like to call on Dr. Kelly if I could, please. Dr. Kelly?
Thanks, Carlin. It's really an honor for me to greet you and congratulate you, the new inductees to the Dartmouth High School Athletic Hall of Fame. The tradition of Dartmouth High School athletics has always been based on pride and excellence, and it has always been more than just about the wins and the losses. Earl Campbell, the great NFL running back, once said, "All your records will be broken. It's how you live that counts." And so part of the tradition of athletics at Dartmouth High School is framing the foundation for life. As the new inductees, as members of this Hall of Fame, you become standard bearers for that tradition. You are well worthy of that honor, and you can be assured that you will be the models for all Dartmouth High School athletes in the future. And we welcome you to that role. Congratulations.
At this time, the Hall of Fame committee thought it would be appropriate to give this plaque to Dr. Kelly. If you can just stand there for a minute, Tommy. Presented to Dr. Thomas E. Kelly, in appreciation of your 35 years of constant support to the Dartmouth High School athletic program. Your unwavering belief in the importance of athletics in the educational prowess will never be forgotten by the athletes and coaches of Dartmouth High School. May 23rd, 2003. In coming to Dartmouth a few days ago, about 30-some years ago, when I came here, the first person I met was the next gentleman we're going to speak to you, a real lover of children, great coach, great educator, great motivator, and a wonderful human being. And that's also our retiring principal, Donald King. Please say a few words, Mr. King.
On behalf of the present staff and students at Dartmouth High School, I'd like to welcome you all here and congratulate the inductees. It's the memories that we have been given by these inductees that add to our spirit and what we call Dartmouth pride. And for that, I thank you very much.
Chairman of our school committee, Mrs. Gail Schultz, is here this evening to bring the wishes of the Dartmouth School Committee, along with our friend Doc Nunes. Mrs. Schultz has been a champion of women's athletics for years. She has brought their thoughts, their ideas, and their programs always to the forefront here in the town of Dartmouth. It is a real honor for me to introduce you, Gail Schultz, Chairman of the Dartmouth School Committee. Gail?
Thank you very much. It's a real honor for me to be here. I'm a great admirer of a good athlete. As a matter of fact, many years ago, I won't tell you when, I went to a girls' college in Baltimore, just outside of Baltimore. And as luck would have it, I got in this philosophy course with a final exam. The last question on the exam was, who's the quarterback of the Baltimore Colts? I missed that question, found myself in this same professor's class again in the spring, and this time I was ready because the last question was, who's the third baseman for the Baltimore Orioles? So since then, I've learned to keep very good track of the athletes around in my own hometown and in my close athletic teams, such as Boston. And so it was with great excitement that I picked up the paper and saw the names of the inductees and realized that I knew many of you. My children graduated in 1980, 82, and 85, so many of you were in school at the same time my children were. And we attended many athletic events during the 70s, 80s, and now as a school committee person in the 90s. I was definitely at the Foxborough Stadium for the Super Bowl, and I definitely remember Mike McGuire and Jerry Pimentel as names mentioned in many conversations. And I remember Pam Gardner playing softball and field hockey and basketball. And I remember not so much Beth Brooks, but I do remember watching you play. So over the years, I've formed some opinions of Dartmouth athletes as I've watched so many games. And one of them is that Dartmouth athletes seem to show a great deal of perseverance and determination. They never give up. I've never been to a game, whether they were down many points, it didn't matter. They never gave up. They fought to the very end with great tenaciousness. Another quality I've seen in Dartmouth athletes is their dedication. They practice, practice, practice to become the best that they can be, and it shows when they play. Another one I would add into the mix is courage and sportsmanship. I've been to many games where I've seen a Dartmouth athlete help out an opponent, even in the heat of battle, and help him up because he's fallen. And that always has impressed me. I've always liked a good sport. So I thank you, all of you athletes, for your contributions to making the Dartmouth athletic program the best that it can be. Under Dr. Kelly, he's been a very good advocate for female and male athletics. And I'm hoping that the new superintendent will continue his policies and move them forward. Matter of fact, we now have lacrosse teams and a sailing team since you were all here. But again, I thank you for your contributions, and from the Dartmouth School Committee, I wish you the very best. I congratulate you, and I hope you continue on to have successful lives. Thank you.
I'd like to call upon our chairman of the Hall of Fame committee. Really is kind of a tough job, and people many times question about athletes getting into the Hall of Fame, and believe me, the group, and chaired by Tommy Cadju, very objective, worked very hard at it. And Tommy is the embodiment, really, of Dartmouth pride. He played here back in the 70s, was a 135-pound linebacker with great courage and desire. He's now a coach of track with great success, also a football coach. So we'd like to have our chairman speak to you for very few minutes. I tried to explain to Tommy that brevity is next to godliness, and I want Tommy to know that. Tommy? No more wine.
Thank you, Coach. Anything else, Paul? Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. On behalf of the Dartmouth Hall of Fame Committee, Please allow me the honor to welcome you to our 11th induction, our 11th Hall of Fame induction. As always, this is an honor for me to be part of this, what has become a wonderful tradition we have here. I am very fortunate to be part of it now. I was very fortunate to be part of its inception back in 1989, where it began under the guidance and passionate leadership of Coach Richard Barry, who was the groundbreaker for this and set the standard by which we try to keep this Hall of Fame what it is, to run it in an appropriate manner, to honor those who deservedly belong there. And we and members of the committee try very hard to maintain the standards that Mr. Barry set for us back in 1989. But tonight is a special night for me, not only because we honor these very worthy inductees. Many of them I know very well. Many of them I can truly call friends. But because tonight we have a special part of honoring a team. We induct a team, and every year when we induct a team, it means a little more. And it means a little more because if you look at the name of Dartmouth behind me, there's no I in Dartmouth. There's no I in team. And of all of us who are part of the brother and sisterhood of athletes who have worn the green of Dartmouth, and the players on this team who are being inducted tonight, they know what I mean to wear the green of Dartmouth. It's the team that makes Dartmouth athletics what it is. It's not the individuals. It's the team. And the team is what we have always been about and what we will always be about. The members of this committee are also a great team who cover up many of the mistakes that I make, the way I stumble and fall, and they just are right there to pick up the pieces and help me move on. As I call your names, could you please stand to be recognized? Mr. Thorsten Arlander. My good friend and coaching colleague, Hall of Fame member, Coach Rocky Wayne Cadero. Attorney and Hall of Fame member, Walter Farrier. My good friend who could not make it tonight, Coach Tom McDermott, who was attending the graduation of one of our athletes from the Naval Academy down in Annapolis, Mr. Tommy McDermott. Okay. My good friend and critic, but here, Mr. Colin Lynch. And our treasurer, who, without her, right now, I'd say we'd be dead in the water. She is basically the rudder that steers the ship for us, Ms. Maureen Waltz. Lastly, please allow this, I hope this will be a memorable and enjoyable evening for all of you, especially our inductees, and to our team. Allow me to conclude by saying, may God bless and keep all of you. Thank you very much.
The Hall of Fame Committee in 1989 started a Special Achievement Award that has picked people who have given so much to the athletic programs at Dartmouth, maybe not being athletes, maybe not being high school graduates, maybe not being graduates of Dartmouth High School, but have done so much for the youth of Dartmouth. Tonight's inductee for the Special Achievement Award is no different than the others. We started with Dr. Dean Freitas and Alvin Glazer and Tony Pinto, Tony Gonzalez, men who gave so much to our town and get very little recognition, which is, again, the name of the word team and unselfishness. So it is really an honor for me to introduce his son, who is going to be the presenter, who is a member of our Hall of Fame and also an attorney in town, his son Walter Farrier Jr., to present his dad. Mr. Farrier.
Thank you, Coach. I'd like to say, distinguished members of the head table, It's a pleasure to be here. It's kind of a sad time for me and a happy time. Before I'd say a few remarks about my father, I'd just like to acknowledge that Dartmouth is a great town, and you hate to lose people by retirement. And I understand today that we're losing two great men here for Dartmouth and in retirement, and they're going to be hard to replace. Along the lines of retirement, every time I've been here, I see someone that I know and find out that someone's retired. And if you've been to Dartmouth High School, if you've been a student, or if you've been an athlete, everyone knows Al Porter. And I found out that he's in retirement. He's not working anymore, but I would like you to know that I found out through the grapevine that he's writing a book. And it's not out yet. Carlos Oliveira is helping him write the book, so it's taken a long time. That physical education department lacks something there, but I understand the title of the book is going to be My Favorite Indoor Sports by Al Porter.
You'll have a green book, Jack.
I didn't realize that there were that many indoor sports, but congratulations, Al, and hurry up and finish that book. Seriously now, I'd like to just say that it's very difficult for me to get up here and talk about my father in a brief time. I could take a long time to talk about him, but I would just like to echo what some of the other speakers have said, that I think probably the greatest thing my father did for our family was move from New Bedford to Dartmouth. And one of the principal reasons why we moved from New Bedford to Dartmouth was because of the school system and the athletics in the school system. And I don't think that we've ever looked back. It has been a family playing for Dartmouth High School, going to Dartmouth High School. It's an experience that I'll never forget, and I certainly have my father to thank for that. I do realize that in some cases I've heard of athletes that have moved from Dartmouth to go to New Bedford, and I certainly think that that's a mistake. Dartmouth High School, starting from the 50s, when my father would take me to the high school to watch some of the athletes, and I remember seeing people like Jimmy Nunes and Danny DeLuz. Danny was one of the men that moved from New Bedford to Dartmouth. He must be a rocket scientist too. But Dartmouth it's a different town. It was a different town in those days, a small town, but it had a school committee, and it had principals and coaches that were very oriented towards athletics. And in my experience, in my years that I've been around town, I've seen it get better and better. The coaching, the players, the teams, and the town. I just recently had a chance to go up and visit the new high school, and it's a state-of-the-art high school. And I don't think when my father and my mother moved us to Dartmouth that they would ever envision that Dartmouth would have that type of facility. But I think we deserve it, and I think it's probably the finest facility in southeastern Massachusetts, and as I said, it only gets better. My father is here because he loves the town of Dartmouth, and during that period of time, he wanted to give something back to the town, and he met a gentleman by the name of Tony Gonsalves, and together they solicited money and put up the scoreboard that's now at Memorial Stadium. And it's a great pleasure for me to say to him, Dad, thanks for everything, and the town of Dartmouth appreciates you very, very much, and so do I.
Thank you, Wally. Class of 1985, Pamela Godden Male. State champion, softball, all-state softball, all-conference field hockey, captain of basketball, a complete Hall of Fame nominee. To present Pam into the Hall of Fame will be her coach and an outstanding coach, Mrs. June Lack.
Okay. I usually get a little nervous talking in front of adults, but I look around this room and I see students and colleagues and do you believe I graduated from high school with this guy? Anyway, I don't feel the least bit nervous. Pam Gardner, obviously an outstanding athlete, or she wouldn't be being inducted. So let me just say that she, first of all, comes from an extremely competitive and athletic family. She has an aunt who is already in the Hall of Fame at Dartmouth. That's Anne-Marie Dupere-Coates, who was unable to be here tonight. Her mom has recently been inducted into the Somerset Athletic Hall of Fame. She has an extremely competitive uncle who brought me here tonight since my husband was working, but my husband is now here. There's a story to every athlete, and I guess I have to start with Pam's story. 3-sport athlete, 4 years of softball, 4 years of basketball, captained her basketball team in her senior year. But I only got to experience Pam at the end of her sophomore year in high school. She said, Mrs. Lack, or Mrs. Pinto as it was back then, she said, do you think I'd have a chance? Pam was she was in the band. I was going to say bad word, but her sister and her sister's husband are here, so I can't say those words. Anyway, she said, do you think I have a shot at playing field hockey next year? I'd really like to be a goalkeeper, and I'm looking at this kid. I mean, she's 4'11", and the goalkeeper pads are bigger than she is. Anyway, it's do you think I have a shot? And it's like I never turn anybody back. So anyway, she came out, and what an incredible goalkeeper she was. We ended up winning our league championship that year in her junior year. She was our starting varsity goalkeeper. We had just graduated a senior goalkeeper, and then she came back in her senior year. Obviously a starting goalkeeper, and we were about only 5-6 games into the season, and we were down at Barnstable, and we beat Barnstable 3-0, and we're on the way back, and it's dark. We come back late at night, and it's dark, and they say, Mrs. Pinto, we have, Pammy seems to have a problem, and here's Pammy on the floor of the bus. She's writhing in pain. She can't sit in a seat. She can't tell me what's wrong with her. She's shivering like crazy. We're putting blankets on her, whatever we had. The bus driver is driving considerably faster than what he should have. I'm sure he's concerned. We were all concerned. We get her home, finally. I think she went to the emergency room. They sent her home and said it was nothing. The very next day, she was admitted back to the hospital, and she had an emergency appendectomy. And we were approaching a very important time in our season. We had a great season going, approaching a very important time. Probably I should say that back in those days, Bishop Stang was a real powerhouse in field hockey, and we were playing Bishop Stang under the lights. And one of the reasons that I asked Mr. Lynch to stop the night games with Bishop Stang was because the game took so much out of us. We were always good at those games, but it took so much out of us that we were so apprehensive the game before Bishop Stang that we usually stunk. And then we played Stang, and we played our brains out against Stang under the lights. And then the next game after, we were so emotionally and physically drained that we usually stunk in that game too. So there were 3 games coming up, and now here's Pam, 2 games before Bishop Stang, under the lights, that underwent the surgery, which is another story that I'll tell you about later. Anyway, Pam went out on, I don't know, but it was like, I think it was like 13, 14 days later, after the emergency appendectomy, she was back starting for us. We ended up winning the league championship, and it goes on from there. We played Dennis Yarmouth in tournament. We won our league. We went to tournament, played Dennis Yarmouth. Played Dennis Yarmouth under the lights in the stadium. A very traumatic game. We had split with them during the season. We ended up tying at the end of the game, went into overtime, still tied, went into penalty strokes with, it's like a, what do you call it, penalty kicks in soccer, like a shootout in soccer or ice hockey. Anyway, we went into penalty strokes. We ended up winning that game 5-4. Pam's the goalkeeper, second-year goalkeeper. Then we went on to play Norwood at Battersfield in Middleborough, and we were playing the #1 seed, which was Norwood. They were undefeated and untied and unscored upon going into that game. We ended up winning that game 2-0. Then we went on to the infamous, or at least infamous in her mind, in my mind, and some of you who might have been there. We went on to Oliver Ames High School to play perennial world champions, Walpole Porkers. That's not nasty. That's what they call themselves, the Porkers. Anyway, we played Walpole, and it was a very, very cold evening under the lights, and we lost the toss at the beginning of the game, which meant that we were attacking into the win in the second half. And it was about halfway through the game, it started snowing, and the snow was just like absolutely driving, and we were running into it and defending against it, and Walpole was running into it. It was 1-1 at the half, and with 4 minutes to go, I remember that we were in the middle of a transition game. We had just intercepted something or stopped a shot coming out of the defensive end, and Walpole intercepted a pass. I still remember the young lady who gotten beat, who I think also deserves to be here as an inductee. But anyway, she had just gotten beat, and I remember Pammy coming out of the goal. She had to come out at least 10 yards out of the goal to block the angle, and as luck would have it for Walpole, it just scooted by her left foot and went into the corner of the goal with 4 minutes left, and we lost 2-1. I believe Case was playing the Division II final right after that, and that game was canceled because of the snow. The officials couldn't see the lines anymore. Anyway, it was a tremendous game, and Pammy's a tremendous goalie. Anyway, she's had a great year. She had 2 years as an all-star goalkeeper, and she only played 2 years of field hockey. She was also a nominee to the Boston Globe in her senior year. Oh, it was, yeah, yay, Pam. Anyway, I have a great deal of pride of asking Pam Gardner Mayo to come up here, and I know Meme is looking down right now and saying, "Way to go, Pam."
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? I would like to thank the Hall of Fame Committee for selecting me to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I would also like to thank all my former coaches as well. All my athletic accomplishments at Dartmouth High were greatly influenced through your guidance and support, and again, I thank you. I would also like to congratulate my fellow inductees. It is truly an honor for me to be here tonight, joining other outstanding athletes in the Hall of Fame. It's sort of a family affair for me. My aunt, Anne Marie Coates, who couldn't be here tonight, was inducted, and as you already said, my mom was recently inducted into the Somerset Hall of Fame. I can only hope that Someday my son or daughter will follow in my footsteps and truly love sports as much as I did, and still do. And I'm more nervous than when I played under the lights. I've really had a lot of fun in the last several weeks going through my scrapbook and reminiscing about my athletic accomplishments at Dartmouth High School, and I'd like to share a few of them with you. When I tell people I was captain of my high school basketball team, they actually laugh and think I'm joking. Our 1984 basketball team was very vertically challenged. The starting guards were Joanne Vieira, Sue Silva, and myself. Although our average height was under 5 feet, we made it to tournament play, and our softball team, under Coach Barry Haskell, even went all the way to win the state championship. We didn't have height, but we sure had might. A couple of weeks ago, I visited the new Dartmouth High School for the first time, and as I was trying to find my way to Mrs. Regan's office, I couldn't help but notice how tall the students are these days. There must be something new in the Dartmouth water that I obviously didn't have. I didn't join the field hockey team until my junior year. I was in the marching band for the first 2 years, and I was really torn inside because band fags and jocks just didn't mix. The band used to drive all the teams nuts, especially the coaches, because they couldn't hear a thing out on the field. I'd always be watching the field hockey team over my shoulder instead of paying attention to the band. And before I knew it, I'd be running to catch up to the band on the other end of the field. My desire and inner passion for sports prevailed. The day Mr. Madrigal yelled at me, "Gardner, either pay attention or go over there with the field hockey team," I turned in my drumsticks for a field hockey stick and never looked back. I played goalie for 2 years, winning our division and earning a tournament berth each year. I remember beating Dennis Yarmouth under the stadium lights after 2 overtimes and a famous first-time ever stroke-off. I'll also never forget letting the ball go through my legs into the net and losing to Walpole in the snow. I also cannot forget to mention a few unsung heroes, because if it were not for them, I probably would not be here tonight. My teammates, especially those in 1984 and 85. There were a lot of outstanding athletes on my teams, and it's because of my teammates that I was able to better myself and perform over and above my potential. My mom, who not only passed along her athletic abilities to me, introduced sports to me at an early age and always encouraged me. Thank you. My twin sister, Kathy. I had an advantage over most people. I had a built-in partner and playmate. I always had someone to throw the ball with and someone to always try to beat and always be better than. She helped me better myself and truly helped me shine. Thank you. Coach June Lack, who was a great mentor and friend to me. She even took me to the cobblers to get custom-made goalie shoes because the standard ones were too big for me. We had to go to the cobblers, and they used rivets to secure my shoes to the goalie shoes to my cleats, so the shoe wouldn't come flying off when I kicked the ball. Her famous words to me were always, "You be tough in there." And sometimes I still hear those words today. Thank you, June. In closing, I would like to read you something Coach Lack wrote about me in her infamous end-of-the-season field hockey poems. 7 of these special kids started out together. 1 more added last year, the other tough as leather. Our newest one, a midget, stands only 4'10", started out a band fag, but for hockey had a yen. She tried out as a junior to compete for keeper's slot and made it over Lauren, her athleticism hot. An all-star in our league again, New Bedford Standard 2. Second team at Boston Globe, Pam Gardner, you came through. I'm going to miss you, little one, as all the rest in here. If you ever get big enough, I'd like to treat you to a beer. And I'd like to take you up on that now. Thank you.
Very good. Our next inductee, class of 1988, Beth Brooks Ogwin. Beth is truly deserving of this award and is a true Hall of Famer, but more importantly, a Hall of Fame teacher, mother, wife, and person. The presenter again will be Mrs. Lack. Okay, kid, you're on.
Again, another outstanding athlete. But now I can continue that story. When Pam had the emergency appendectomy, I needed a goalkeeper. And behind her, I had a couple of goalkeepers to choose from. And we looked, and the best goalkeeper that we had was our freshman goalkeeper, and that was Beth Brooks. And Beth came in to fill in for Pam in those 3 games. We beat Falmouth 6-0. That was the game before the Stang game when we were usually lousy. And then we played Stang under the lights. A tight game as usual, but we pulled it out 2-1. And then we played New Bedford and beat them 2-0. So those were those were Beth's freshman games. Anyway, after Pam graduated, Pam was our starting goalkeeper for the next 3 years. She also made the Bay State games, and the Bay State games, just to make that, I think is quite an incredible accomplishment. And I got to see her play up in Boston. She played 3 sports: 4 years in field hockey, 4 years in basketball, 4 years varsity softball. Then she went on to UMass Dartmouth and played another 4 years in each of the 3 sports there. I got to watch her a little bit more in softball as an umpire at that time, and an outstanding third baseman in college and an outstanding shortstop at Dartmouth High School. I think one of the things that most impresses me about Beth is not just her athletic ability, but what she was willing to do with her athletic ability after she got out of high school, and that is she came back and gave back to the program that which she gave. That which she took, that is. She came back, and she, even to this day, comes out on her own and helps out with our goalkeepers. She gets almost, I think, every goalkeeper since she's been there, she helps to get them started, teaches them the basic fundamentals. We had her as a coach at TNT camp, which was a local camp that we've just recently ended. Last year was the year before this summer was our last year there, but she was our goalkeeper instructor. Just a phenomenal person in that she is so willing to give back, and obviously an outstanding athlete. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Beth Brooks Ogwin.
I think I'm a lot nervous up here than I was sitting at the table. I'd like to thank June very much for that lovely introduction. And I'd like to thank my former coaches, June included, Barry Haskell, and all the support from Mr. Lynch and Mr. King, and giving me the opportunity to come back and give back to the kids at the high school. I enjoy coaching. Hopefully I can come back after I have another child. In a few years, maybe I can continue again. And I hope everybody, I thank everybody on the committee and congratulate the other inductees. And that's it. I'm going to keep it nice and short. Thank you very much.
Class of 1984, Michael McGuire. we have to remove Gaffney from his outfit. He may have to be removed. What do you think? Tavares hit him too many times. Tavares hit you too many times. You're getting punchy on me. Tumbling off the wine. Oh, Gaff. Oh. Michael McGuire, an outstanding athlete, tremendous competitor, and very courageous. Great shot putter, 50 foot, but also very humble. His presenter is, in my opinion, one of the finest football coaches a guy could ever work with. More importantly, a great human being, Mr. Richard Barry.
Thank you, Colin. The reason I lowered this is so I could lift it up so I feel tall. Does anyone have a rubric cube for Gaffney over there so he can do something? And jeez, I think you created a monster, Colin. I'm telling you.
Keep him busy.
I still hear yeah in my dreams.
I'd like to thank Michael McGuire for asking me to be his presenter. I consider it an honor. I'd also like to congratulate the 1983 football team. Not only were they great players, and they achieved great success, but they were just outstanding individuals. It was a great treat working with them. Rumor has it that when Michael McGuire got the letter acknowledging his induction into the Hall of Fame, his brother Robbie, who was also an outstanding athlete, hired a handwriting analysis, believing that it really wasn't Michael's name on it, it should have been Robbie's name on it. But again, Michael's here and I'm presenting him. We had a motto as running backs, and one of the mottos were a block for your brother. And I have to be honest for you, no one took that to heart more than Robbie McGuire, and no one blocked, and he literally blocked for his brother, being Michael McGuire. And many of the achievements that Michael had are a direct result of Robbie blocking for him, along with Kevin Estrella over here also. From first coaching Michael, and the first time I met him, you realize behind that quiet demeanor was a fierce competitor. In coaching parlance, you'd refer to Michael McGuire as a running back, and you'd call them the bell cow. The bell cow means that you want to give the ball to him often, and you want to give him into situations you want good things to happen. Michael was always able to pick up the extra yardage, and again, he was blessed with a great offensive line. Where's our offensive line? Can we raise our hands? Be recognized also with a great offensive line. Michael, I'm sure, knows you're only as good as your line in front of you. He was always able to pick up the extra effort yardage. He was always able to score when we got down to the goal line. Somehow a running back is able to sniff out where that goal line is. And somehow great running backs know when they have to rise to the occasion. Michael, because of his size, speed, and aggressiveness, was able to just push that pile and finish off a run. No one had extra effort yardage better than Michael. He was an important cog in our offense. Colin made sure, and one of the dictates to me was, make sure we have a play for Michael McGuire in every single hole. And we'd come up with more creative things, and I think Michael might have diagrammed a few of them himself. If I can give you a quick bio on Michael and some of his accomplishments, just so you realize why Michael is inducted and how deserving he is. He was a leading rusher in 1982 and 83, averaging 900 yards per season. He was also the leading scorer. He competed in 2 Super Bowls. He was a leading contributor for the 1980 Super Bowl champion. He was a Dartmouth High School representative to the Otto Graham Award. He played in the Shriners game, and I think Colin might have even been coaching that time, coaching the Shriners game. Michael also did track and field. He was undefeated for 2 years in the shot put. His personal best was 54 feet 10 inches. 2 times SMC shot put champion, state shot put champion, Class B. But as I was talking with Michael, he said one of the best things he did, and one of the things he enjoyed the most, was setting the record in the 4x100 relay on the new track, which is the old Dartmouth High School, and his fellow teammates were Jerry Pimentel, Ricky Phillips, and Mark McGuire. And again, somehow as a team player doing football, you carry that over to track, and somehow relay sort of touch you a little bit more than the individual accomplishments. What led to Michael's accomplishments and the team's success was the closeness and chemistry of that team. They grew up together. They played with each other, and they played against each other competitively. Each player assumed their own role and relished in the success of each other. They were always there for one another. A quick story, Michael had a stinger in his shoulder, and we were looking for some certain type of shoulder pad, so Colin and I got together. Somehow we found it somewhere. I don't know if we went to Tennessee, I don't know if we went to Texas, but the word Texas, the word was Dozier or something, so we bought these gigantic shoulder pads. I mean, they were unbelievable. They got a collar on them, they had things there. And they sort of took care of Michael's stinger, but all of a sudden you'd be in practice, and all of a sudden he had this look that he could give Kevin Estrella. They were sort of on the same wavelength, and that meant my shoulder's hurting a little bit. Kev, will you jump in for me? Kevin Estrella, an outstanding defensive back, designated blocker, and backup fullback. But again, that's the type of team they were. There were no egos. Were there a lot of stars on the team? Yeah, there were no egos on the team. Probably the only time Michael was frustrated is we tried to make him a tight safety. And of course, I sort of get there and I sort of lock in, and I don't really give much when I'm trying to get someone I think can be good at what they're doing. Well, I only frustrated the hell out of poor Michael McGuire. Somehow, when the quarterback would sprint out, he's supposed to cover a flat. No, he'd go after the quarterback. Somehow, when the quarterback sprinted the other way, he's supposed to go through the third. He'd be like a linebacker and pursue laterally. And that was because of his competitive and physical instincts. Somehow one of the coaches said, well, listen, if he's doing those things, let's make him a defensive end. Well, that's what we did. We made him a defensive end, turned into a great defensive end, both rushing the passer. You couldn't knock him off his feet. He could close the off-tackle hole. I brought the team together with the defensive backs together. We're all sitting there, and I wanted to break the news to the defensive backs that we had lost Michael. We're going to put a new tight safety in. So we got there all together, and I said, listen, Michael's not going to be with us anymore. He's going to be a defensive end. So I said, anyone have any comments? So all of a sudden I look over there and Carlos Oliveira says, and now remember, Carlos Oliveira was the athlete who made that famous knockdown at the end of the Super Bowl to guarantee our win. Carlos told me to say that, by the way. He added that part to it. So as we got the defensive backs together, I said, Michael's not going to be with us anymore. He said, Coach, many are called to be defensive backs, but few are chosen. Michael, the Hall of Fame has made a great choice in selecting you as an inductee into the class of 2003. I now present to you Michael McGuire. Congratulations, buddy.
Thank you very much, Coach. That was excellent. When I first got the call about this award, it was from Rich White, and ever since then, I want to thank him up front because it was, Rich, what do I wear? What kind of speech do I give? What does my wife wear? Does she come? How many tickets do I need? But thank you very much, Rich White. When, I thought, okay, if anyone's ever been to Kevin Estrella's wedding, you know I can't give a speech. So I said, I better organize my thoughts, and the way I thought I'd do that was chronologically. And unfortunately, because we were such a good, close-knit group, I got to start back to the third grade. Hopefully it won't take too long. I'm going to go quickly, but I have to do it. For you, I had you in here, it's gone. Third grade, first day of school, part of school. My father came from Florida, and Miami Dolphins were like the big team then, so I had my number 39 shirt on, Larry Zonka. Didn't know anybody. Go out to recess. Bob Sylvia goes, hey, number 39, you want to play some football with us? So I want to thank you, Bob, for that. It's a long time ago, but I'll never forget it. But, that's how close we were. And, I'll move quickly here. Then the next thing I'll jump to is Little League. And my father was my football coach, my basketball coach, baseball coach. He actually coached Little League baseball for over 25 years after we left. I think he's only had one championship since me and my brother have left, but other than that. And what was funny about that is when I looked at, when we went through the scrapbooks and stuff going over this thing, I noticed that I had a 72 on my shirt, and I was a tackle, and Mike Aruda was a quarterback. So I thought that was a big change when we got a little bit older. Real quickly, in middle school, and then I'll get to high school and everything will be good, but middle school, I don't see him here, but Butch Frias, the after-school program, my brother and I were there every day, and I think that helped us as we grew up in life. It was a nice thing that he did there. When I get to freshman year, I think of freshman football. And we were 8-0 and 80, and I still remember the team. We were so proud. We had these shirts made up, 8-0 and 80. And I'll bring back one play. One thing that I remember there was Coach Cav called me out of a game, and he said something that's probably not politically correct. Gave me the tap on the ring, tap on the helmet with his ring, and he said something like, blah, 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 get back in there and run. Got back in there, ran 70 yards, ran over some opponent freshman, and I still remember Coach Lynch and the varsity team was down at the end zone, and I remember making sure I ran near Coach Lynch so he knew who I was at the end. So, that's one of the things, I mean, those are the things you remember. You don't remember wins, losses, good, bad. You remember those little things. I'm going to jump to track now. The two things I remember about track, Coach Barry mentioned once, one of them was the 4x100 team. I mean, I'm sitting there, I'm 220, 225, running with like Jerry and Ricky and Mark. They're like 160, 180 then. So it was an honor to be a part of their team. Admittedly, I was the slowest leg of that race, but it was something I always fought for. And I can remember Coach Cav, everyone at that time, you don't just get the team, you don't get to be on that relay team just because you play football. You have to compete against people. So I had sophomores running against me every week at practice. They weren't running against Jerry. It was like time trials against me every week, but it was very important. The other thing I remember about track was me and Dave. I mean, we were very tight in track, and I think for like the last 2 years, we were like 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. Every first place, second place, every meet. It was a great time that we had together. First varsity game, sophomore year. Kenny Govea goes out, hurts his ankle. I go in, plays on one, I'm offsides, or in motion. Couldn't believe it. Remember Steve Silva going, big guy going, you better not do that again in the huddle. But it was a good time. And then when I think of our junior year when it was really our team, and we're almost there. We're getting there. Junior year when it was really, I thought it was our team. Sophomore year, it was kind of tough. The practices, I just remember Kevin Estrella beating the hell out of me. I mean, you go to a game and he made it easy to play in those kind of events because you get beat by him, everyone else is a wimp. I remember a play in 5th grade. I do regress here. He knocked out 4 of my teeth, and it was the day. It was a day that we had a Christmas party, so I couldn't eat. I was very upset about that. And speaking of eating, Coach Barry used to make me run 2 miles every day after practice because of my weight, which I'll never forget. And that's why, one of the reasons why I asked him to speak for me tonight. But the most important kind of things were the bowl. Everyone remembers the bowl. And I'm going to bring up, maybe 2 things actually that I remember. And one was when Gary Barboza tipped the ball, and my nickname was Stone Hands, and I actually intercepted it. No one really knows that Gary tipped it. That's why I caught it. So I want to make sure everyone knows that today. And the second thing I remember about the bowl, which could have made any highlight film across the country, is when Ricky Phillips caught a ball. He was on his back, and he was literally on his back. The ball was underthrown, and he caught it. And that was one of the key plays of the game, which I'll never forget because it was incredible. That lives in my mind more than any other play I've ever seen. So, Rick, if you're out there, that was the play. And then, I guess in conclusion, finally, I want to thank my #1 fan, which is my grandmother. She's 91. She's been to every Little League, Pee Wee League game, college game I've ever been to. And my mother told me a story where, she'd always show up an hour early to save seats in the stand so we could be up front, the family could be up front. But when we were playing Stang one time, there was a nun saying, get 45, get 45. And she told the nun, shut up, leave 45 alone. So that was, and it's nice that she's still here. I'd like to thank my father for, getting us through all the sports events and, introducing my brother and I to all the sports. I'd like to thank my wife for listening to all our glory stories, glory day stories whenever we're together. And lastly, I'd like to thank my mother, of course, for, I kind of listed this chronologically. She's always been there from the start to the finish. And she's the foundation that, most of us that are up here, if you don't thank your mothers, I don't think you'd be here. But thank you. I have more. Actually, I forgot step 13A on my speech, and this is important, and I forgot it, and I hope I'm not taking up too much time here. And I got to sing you out, Paul. I got to sing you out. When I went to college, I was on the red team. Basically, I sucked. It's easy being a starting back. And I think of the guys on the team that didn't start, that played. And Paul, he's given us a lot of crap tonight. He's almost an inspiration for all of us here because I realized how much it meant to him at that time and how much it meant for everyone else. And he's a better player than I'll ever be because of that.
Class of 1985, Jerry Pimentel. Competitor, always wanted to win. Obviously, in his 3 years at Dartmouth High School, I went back and tried to check all the records. I'm not a big record guy, but he was responsible for total yardage, 2,500 yards. That's quite a thing, 2,500 yards. He was league champion in 4 events in track. And I'll never forget, Jerry, the Somerset game that you played that day when you were a senior. I'll never forget that. And his presenter is also a great football coach and a guy that's put UMass Dartmouth on the map in New England, Mr. Bill Cavanaugh, who was an assistant coach on our team. Mr. Bill Cavanaugh.
I got props. How'd you handle this one, Mike? Wait. Congratulations to all the inductees tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here. To the '83 team, we had a nice year at UMass this year, and I always tell Deb that at the end of the championship game up in Westfield, there was a 60-second time when the game ended and we were playing in a beautiful field. It had snowed the whole fourth period. You knew it was going to happen. It was one of those sparkling times that, that's why you play. Not for the time after it or the time before, for the time you play the game and you practice. And it was just like, it couldn't be any better. And the only other time I remember like that in coaching was at the end of that Super Bowl, that time, when Rick and I were upstairs and a few other coaches, and we came down, and as we hit the field, I remember Carlos was there. It was just one of those times when you say, it was dark, and it was just a perfect time, and congratulations to all you guys. It's been great thinking about being here tonight because we went back, and these guys were my last freshman team, and it was just wonderful. And the good thing about it is it still is, and it's back here tonight. On that note, though, I've been reading a lot about this. Carlos Oliveira made the key play in giving the team a Super Bowl victory. And then I'm here to defend Carlos. My back's killing me. And some of you said, revisionist history. I got the ball, remember. And Carlos knocked that ball down so hard that the stuffing was knocked out of it. And It's never been the same again. And Carlos, this is true. This is it. You did it, buddy. A couple of announcements also. There's a party at my house after this tonight, put on by my wife and Jerry. Looking around here, I think the motto is Jerry pays and my wife prays. But the reason I'm here tonight is to present my friend Jerry Pimentel, and that's why I'm here. I've got a little chronological order I'm working with also, but Jerry, if you know Jerry, he's the guy that gives you the spark. And the first time I saw, about 6 weeks ago, I got a call, a voicemail, bad news about a former player of mine down the Cape, and it was real bad news, so it ruined my day. And 6 o'clock that night, my daughter Erin came in and said, there's Jerry on the phone. Now, I have a brother named Jerry. But Jerry in my house is Jerry Pimentel. And this is Erin, and she said, Jerry's on the phone. So I got the call, and he said, Coach, I'm getting into the Hall of Fame when you present me tonight. And that picked up my day, and Jerry's picked up my day numerous times in my life. When first time I saw Jerry was when he was in 8th grade in my class. And he walked in, and he had a spark when he walked in. Now I'm a young coach, and this time he's got a spark, and I'm also saying, look at the way he walks. This kid can run. I got to get him out for track. So we were able to do that. When he was a freshman on the track team, he would get on the bus, and he's one of the most organized. If you ever saw Jerry's truck now, he's one of the most organized young people there ever was. He'd sit in the front seat by himself, 2 pairs of shoes, a change of clothes. His mother had packed him a lunch at all times, and he was strictly business. True story. And that's the way he was back then, and even now he still is. I remember his junior year in high school, the thing you liked about Jerry when you coached him, he listened a little bit, and we would talk about, and I explained to him one day, well, Jerry, the reason we have practice on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock is so that you guys aren't out that late on Friday night. Which was a true story. That's one of the reasons you have athletics. And I said, why don't you try, well, what should I do? So why don't you get a date on Friday night? He came in the next day and said, hey, I got a date last night, just like you said. Good work. Another memory I have of Jerry is a personal one. When we built our house in around 1989, I'm not sure, but we were talking about building a house, and we hadn't seen Jerry for a while, and next thing you know, he showed up, and we got into the house, and Jerry he'd be doing everything for you, and then we'd finish one job, and then I'd say, well, I'm going to do this job without Jerry, and then he'd hear that I was putting in the floors or something, and he'd come over and start screaming at me because I didn't call him up, which was fine. But I remember him with my son Billy, who was 7 at the time, and he'd be in the closets, and he'd have Billy zipping sheetrock into the wall, and he'd be smiling, and he'd have a spark, and he would just be happy as can be. And that's what Jerry is. The sad memory I have about Jerry is in October this year, my mother passed away, and sadly, Jerry's father passed away 3 days later. And as we all know, we hope he's here with us tonight, but everybody here misses him a great deal, and I'm sure that he is very, very proud of Jerry right now. In Jerry's athletic endeavors, he also was a sparker. I remember him when he broke onto the scene his sophomore year. It was a Friday night game against Barnstable, and in the first quarter, they punted it to him, and he was gone. And later in the same quarter, and it was a very, very good Barnstable team, he caught a pass, and bang, he was gone again. And it was right away you saw he had the spark, and we needed it that night. As you see in the program there, he set the 300 record sophomore year. I went to track, and I remember just walking up to me in school one day and saying, oh, I set the school record last night in the 300. Oh, good. In his 3 years in outdoor track, with a lot of these guys also, we never lost a track meet. I think we were 29-0 in that time, and as Mike was mentioning, we were very good. I always remember Jerry, we'd come down to the league meet, and in those meets you get 6 jumps, and all 3 years where he was the league champ in the 200 long jump and the relay, he'd be behind with 1 jump to go. And he'd have his smile on saying, yeah, well, don't worry. This is what. And by the end, you weren't worried. You say, have you won yet? He said, no, but I'm going to win. And there he goes on his last jump. He always won. As Coach was saying, though, I think Jerry's highlight was the Somerset game, his senior year. And we struggled beating Somerset in those days. And Rick and I were up top there. And all of a sudden, Somerset went ahead with about 2:30 to go in the game. And we said, well, what are we going to do? And we continued to run this sweep. And over and over again, they kept. Next thing you know, they had an 8-man front, and we said, well, if they're going to continue to do that, we will. So we ran a sweep one more time. He went 80 yards, and that was easy, except, of course, I turned to Rick and said, oops, we scored too soon. And then, of course, we had the infamous Farias throwing up on the field. But we won anyway. Years ago, talking about Jerry, Coach Lynch and I, we used to cut wood together. And I remember Coach Lynch saying to me, it's a great thing when the guys that you coach become your friends. And I have numerous friends out there that I did coach. Jerry Pimentel is a truly, truly good friend of mine. As a teacher at Dartmouth High, you look out in the corridors all the time and between classes, and everybody's giving somebody a kiss, and they turn around and they say, oh, I love you. And you say, oh, my goodness. They don't know what love is. I'm a lucky guy. I love Jerry Pimentel, and it's my honor to present him to the Hall of Fame tonight.
Most of you might know I'm not too good of a speaker, so I'll make this short. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for nominating me. Thank you very much. I'm very honored, my family, everything. Thank you very much. Second of all, I'd like to thank my family. They were always there. They drove me. They picked me up. They took care of me. Thank you very much. You're always there for me. I'll never forget it. Thank you. I'll try not to go too fast. Next, I'd like to thank the coaches. The coaches mean more to me than anything. They were a role model for everything. Everything we ever did was what the coaches said. Mr. Lynch, Mr. Barry, Mr. Kavanaugh, Mr. Cadju, everybody. We almost listen to them more than we listen to our own parents. They're great. They're a great example to all of us. One story I have to say about Mr. Kavanaugh. He was coaching us, and I don't know what game it was, but we beat Stang. It was like, so we didn't really play good. So Mr. Kavanaugh was giving us a speech. He said, if you guys play like this again, you're going to get a butt kick, because next week you're playing New Bedford. And they just beat Stang 29-7. And all of a sudden, Ricky Phillips stood up and said, excuse me, Coach, it was 26-29. Mr. Kavanaugh stood up and said, Phillips, do you want to coach the team? Right then and there, we just had total respect for every one of the coaches there. It was a great story. I still chuckle about it, and it's great. Mr. Kavanaugh, you're like family to me. You've always done everything for me. You've been there for me every time I needed. I thank you very much. You've been there for everything. Thank you. And not last but not least, but the linemen. I would tell you, all my success is to the linemen. I could run through the holes, and I didn't get touched. The linemen were unbelievable. I'll tell you straight out, the best set of linemen I've ever seen in my life. I was there, but they took care of everything. I say all the credit goes to the linemen right now. Every one of those guys should be in the Hall of Fame. I'll tell you right now. I'm not excluding the other guys, sorry, the running backs, everything else, but we had a great bunch of athletes, and for the last 4 years I was in high school, we didn't lose many games, and it's because we were really close, and to this day we're still close. Right now we hang around together, we do everything together still. Most people, most of the people's wives wish we weren't so close. But I tell you, we're a real close-knit bunch, and nothing ever really bothered us. We were never afraid of ever losing a game ever. And it was a great thing, and it was never a fear ever. And that was a tribute to our own team. I think it was the greatest bunch of guys I've ever had. I thank you to every one of you guys. It was great. It was an honor to play with every one of you guys. Not just football, but track. Believe it's my pleasure. Thank you. Last but not least, I'm sorry. I want to dedicate this to my father. I wish he was here right now. Thank you.
Our next inductee, class of 1953, Mr. James Nunes. Mr. In the early 1950s, Jim Nunes made an impact on any game that he was in, not only at Nary League level, and that time Dartmouth High School was the Nary League, but also on the Bristol County level. According to the great historian Dean Freitas, Jim Nunes was in a class by himself. To be presented into the Hall of Fame will be his teammate, Mr. Francis Thorley. Mr. Thorley?
Good evening. I'm pleased to introduce Jim Nunes. He's a classmate, a good friend, and to be able to attend his induction into the Dartmouth High School Athletic Hall of Fame. This honor for Jim and his basketball accomplishments are well earned and long overdue. Jim's statistics, they speak for themselves. As a freshman, which was unheard of in those days, he played at times for the varsity. He became a starter for the high school varsity basketball team as a sophomore. He scored over 1,200 points in his high school career. He was an all-Narragansett League selection for 3 years, his sophomore, junior, and senior years. And he was also selected to the All-Bristol County League team in his senior year. Upon graduation, Jim volunteered for the Army. He was on the All-Star Army team in Germany. And while playing basketball in the Army, a Boston Celtics scout had approached him and asked him to try out with the Celts. After the service, Jim came back to Dartmouth, and he played semi-pro ball with some of his buddies from high school days, and at that time won the city championship. His statistics are even more impressive when you think what basketball was 50 years ago. It was vastly different than today. And I mentioned defense, defense, defense. We think of people like Bill Russell, who really didn't score an awful lot, but was an all-star and most valuable player to his team. Today's teams, they're offensively minded. Some even forget to play hard-nosed defense. And Jim achieved the goals that he did in an era of very, very, very tough defense. Games in our era were won with 40, 45, or with 50 points. Actions today in basketball that are allowed, that are far different from years ago. And I look upon walking and traveling with the ball, palming the ball, setting in the pivot. And yet, under the rules that we played, Jim played in our time, those kind of actions would result in a turnover of the ball. Also today, you see the pros, the three-point shot, the stuffing the ball, the bonus foul shots. Offense is the name of the game. I feel that sports and their requirements mirror our lives. To accomplish what Jim did takes practice, it takes effort, it takes discipline, it takes teamwork, and you have to play by the rules. Or put in a different description, if you'd like, another way, it's perspiration, it's determination, and it's inspiration, i.e. desire. The best strive for perfection, working to be the very best that one can be. And Jim epitomizes these traits even today. And he works and follows them in his daily life. His fishing skills and boating skills as a captain are absolutely outstanding. His results for catching fish, for those of you that are fishermen, they can't be beat. He's very competitive and at the same time very particular and expertise in what he does. Jim is held in high regard and he is in constant demand. He is also a very avid and very accomplished hunter. The bottom line, he excels at whatever he undertakes, and above all, he is true to his beliefs. I think that with Jim, that it is truly unfortunate that it took all this time to obtain the high school athletic recognition that he deserves. But on the eve of our 50th high school class reunion, I'm pleased to be at his induction with the Dartmouth High School Hall of Fame. Jim, congratulations.
I want to thank everybody that inducted me into the Hall of Fame. I want to thank Ronnie Souza, who wrote the letter to the Hall of Fame. I want to thank Fran for the introduction. And I want to thank, most of all, I want to thank my wife for all the time she spent going to the library, digging up all these write-ups and statistics and so forth. Thank you, Colin. I really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Our next inductee was unable to make it, Teresa Roback Houlihan, class of 1970. Teresa now lives in Lansing, Michigan, four-sport captain, and she will be presented into the Hall of Fame by our chairman, Mr. Thomas Cadju. Tom?
In 1970, when Terry Roback was a senior, I was a freshman at Dartmouth High School. And there were many outstanding athletes in the school at that time. I remember Wayne Hamlet, who was a member of our Hall of Fame. I remember Steve Turner, who would go on to be an outstanding tackle at Boston College and get a tryout with the New England Patriots. But Terry was, in many ways, an outstanding athlete, female athlete among many that were in Dartmouth at that time. As Marsha Pickard, who was here tonight, could tell you that Terry was outstanding in 4 different sports here, and we were near the end of the time at Dartmouth where someone could participate in 2 sports at one time. She played volleyball and field hockey, basketball and softball, and she was outstanding at all of them. From what I remember of Terry, she was very soft-spoken, very unassuming, and a very humble girl, but she was basically the spark that just rubbed off on everyone else, and basically what we often refer to as the straw that stirred the drink. She was the player that made things happen. When it came time in basketball, when the game was on the line, Terry had the ball. In softball, she was the one that would get the big hit when they needed it, or make the big play in the field on defense when the game was on the line. Unfortunately, Terry could not be here. She We know that she currently resides in Lansing, Michigan. We tried very hard to contact her, both by phone and by mail, in trying to inform her of her induction, and unfortunately we never got anything back in return. But Terry Roback Houlihan is a definite, he definitely belongs as a member of our Hall of Fame, and hopefully someday we can honor her with this induction. Okay, and it was my pleasure to speak on her behalf, and hopefully that someday Terry will know that she is among a very prestigious group of people. Okay, thank you very much.
Good job, buddy. Class of 1963, Mr. Richard Raymond. Again, Mr. Raymond is unable to make, lives in Arizona. He was a 3-time All-State performer in track, 3 different events, and we're very fortunate tonight. Our own Hall of Fame, Al Porter, who was a triple Hall of Famer, the Bedford Vocational, the State Track Coaches Association Hall of Fame, and also, of course, the Dartmouth High School Hall of Fame as a coach. So let me get Mr. Al Porter up here to induct Mr. Raymond into the Hall of Fame.
We'll do this a little bit like a class. If you'll open your textbook to the very middle, you'll see a picture of Richard Raymond in action in the 300-yard dash. But I want you to look at the background. This was 1963. That is what they called, in those days, indoor track. Today they call it winter track. In those days it was indoor track and we ran outdoors. Now they have winter track and they run indoors. Okay? But you can see the buses. This is at the old New Bedford Vocational School. Sometimes we had to shovel the track off to have a track meet down there. We did have one adventure with Richard. There was a lot of snow on the ground, and Richard hit the first corner along with a kid from another school, probably Falmouth, and he was elbowed off the track. And I hear this plaintiff crying, "Mr. Borner, what am I going to do?" He's up to his armpits in snow. That's where we threw the snow and we shovel it off. Get back on the track and run because the race was over. I want to thank Attorney Farrier for publicizing my new book. The only reason he's done that is because he's mentioned prominently in it, in the chapter of the outdoor track team in 1965's biology field trip to Horse Neck Beach. And he I hope I can read this. I got it all wet. Richard Raymond, Class D champion in 300-yard dash, Class D champion 440-yard dash, Class D champion in the long jump. Richard, he hates to be called Richie. Richard was enrolled in a course they had at Dartmouth High School in those days that they called the Aggie course. Some of you old veterans might remember it. Dartmouth, being a farm town, had a course where they trained the young people to go out with the latest farm technology and return to the farm. And Richard, who was not from a farming family, was enrolled in that course, and he was doing very poorly in it. He wasn't motivated. He just, he was there temporarily, I can assure you of that, temporarily. He struggled academically for a couple of years. He wasn't challenged and just was floating along. He just wasn't realizing his potential. The demands of the track program, and those of you who took part in it realized there were a few demands in it, brought Richard along, and he began to see the importance of his grades, and he worked to keep them up. Richard was, and he still is, a very withdrawn, self-effacing man. He just couldn't understand all the hoopla that went with his championships. He came to the meet, he worked hard, usually he won, and he went home and forgot the whole thing. He had a lot of other items on his agenda, and he could not understand why people made so much over him and his championships. And he remains this humble, withdrawn individual to this day. He was told by the then guidance department that he wasn't college material because he'd been in the Aggie course for a couple of years. But subsequent to graduating from Dartmouth High School, he received a bachelor's and a master's degree. He now resides with his wife in the Phoenix area. He's in the insurance business, and his insurance business has a particular niche. He insures engineers. When their structures fall down and they're sued, his insurance company pays off. I don't know how much business he gets in paying off the insurance. Richie would have been inducted into the Dartmouth High School Hall of Fame many years ago. We just couldn't find out where he was. I had seen him 10 years ago on a trip to Phoenix, and I was out there for a week, and I was able to socialize with him during that time, and we kept in contact for a couple of years, and then things he disappeared from the radar screen, and that was the end of it. We talked about inducting Richard several times, couldn't find out where he was. This time, I got a private investigator. Private investigator found out where he was. I was able to contact him, but regrettably he's not able to attend. It's an honor for me to speak on behalf of Richard today and welcome him to the Dartmouth High School Hall of Fame. Thank you very much.
To finish up on the evening, we'd like to induct into the Hall of Fame the 1983 Super Bowl football team, undefeated 11-0, and talk about them just a little bit. It's very difficult this time of the evening to do a lot of talking because people are anxious to get home. I understand that. But I'd be remiss if we didn't talk a few minutes about them and about the coaches who coached them and the young men who are here tonight representing that team. First and foremost, I think, and this has always come to my mind through Don Doyen and Rick Barry, that to be a real great athlete, you have to compete. And if you saw we have 4 Hall of Famers in this class, except for one, they're all multi-athletes. In other words, multi-sport athletes. They love to compete. As Michael talked about the relay team, Jerry talked about competing. They wanted to win. I think competition is very, very important. It's a sad thing now in our day and age that kids kind of centralize on one sport and they don't try to compete in a lot of events. They don't want to compete on basketball or baseball, football, track, or whatever it might be. Somehow someone in the 5th grade told them they're going to be an All-American in basketball, so they play AU basketball and they don't compete against other people. I'm sure that Jerry Pimentel and Michael McGuire could tell you many, many stories about track meets where they met so many kids from other schools that they've never met in football. So I guess the point I'm trying to bring out, that one of the reasons this team was so successful, they love to compete. They love to win. We had 3 very, very good captains. I feel badly that Mike Aruta's not here tonight because I always remember Michael in the locker room, his knee was going up and down about 90 miles an hour before every game, was going up and down, up and down, up and down. He was a very excitable captain. Kevin O'Neill cannot be here because he's somewhere on an aircraft carrier over in the Pacific. I don't know where David Spatch told me, but he's a JAG officer on a carrier. There were 3 great captains, of course, and the other captain is here, Robert Sylvia, who in my estimation is, I have a fondness for linebackers. I always try to coach them. I love to coach linebackers. I think defense is the way to go, and I love to. Bobby has been one of the finest linebackers I ever coached. But we could talk about all the players tonight, and we're going to introduce them individually to come up and just get a certificate. I think of Gary Barbosa a lot because I think if Gary had a bad situation where he got hurt, came back after his injury, played in his senior year. He was an outstanding tackle for us, great football player. I think of Mike Tavaz, who Paul Gaffney deserves a Congressional Medal of Honor. Thinks that happened. He had a bottle of wine tonight and it gets to his head. But Paul Gaffney, as Michael McGuire said very astutely, that Paul Gaffney was the unsung hero of our red team because he had to play against Paul Gaffney had to play against Tavaz all the time, and Tavaz, of course, without a doubt, the finest defensive lineman I had seen in a long time, and he didn't look like much except till the whistle blew and all hell broke loose. But he was just a great, great football player. And I don't think anybody could ever have the record of blocking 9 punts in 2 years. So he's quite a football player. He was. I wish he was here tonight. I tried to get him. He's a very shy guy, and he gave a very poor Beth Ogden thinks her speech was short. It was twice as short his was. But anyway, I think about the season. I think about a game that we played early in the season when we almost lost, and this team that could not be beat. In '83, we almost got beat by Fian on a middle screen, 6-3. Middle screens were nemesis there. The year before, we got beat on a middle screen. But anyway, we were so aggressive, and we're 6-3. We came down and won the game, and then the rest is history. We kept winning every game, and then my colleague and my friend Carlos Oliveira made the big play in the Super Bowl game, and the rest is history. But it was a wonderful team. We are very fortunate at Dartmouth High School. We had Bill Cavanaugh, Tommy Cadju, Rick Barry, Tom McDermott, and Don Doyen working with me, and they were just great coaches and great friends. We had kind of a thing going that we weren't just coaches, we were friends. We attended each other's, whatever it was, good times, bad times, sad times, we were together. And the players, we drew a lot of energy from these players. Someone said to me one day, why do you still coach? I mean, you're probably the oldest guy in this room, but because I'm selfish. I get energy from the men I coach, and they give me energy. And these guys were great people. I'm talking to David Spatch, who was just a wonderful football player, but he became, an outstanding citizen, a jet pilot. I mean, Michael McGuire is an outstanding engineer. Robert Sylvia. All these men are successful in their work. No matter what they do, they're successful. Jerry Pimentel is probably one of the finest workers in the city of Boston. I mean that sincerely. That is what these kids made these kids. They were unselfish. They knew their role. Paul Gaffney, we could all make fun of Paul not playing a lot, but Paul Gaffney was the toughest kid on the team. Happened to be the smartest, too. He could always fix my watch. He always told me what to do, and he was the smartest. He really was. And really, he really threw the teachers off, because I was always getting a question about Pimentel, about Bozer, Oliveira. The teachers would come, what is the matter with these guys? Then I said, well, Gaffney's on the team. Oh, yeah, he's a nice boy. So everything was okay with Gaffney, But, and Paul kind of bailed us out with all the AP guys, and, because we had some guys that couldn't be AP, But that's the greatest thing about football. It's the only sport, in my opinion, that teaches humility. You have to get knocked down, and you have to get up. Everybody has to get up or you quit. It isn't a sport like basketball. No offense, Mr. Nones. Great sport. I love it. Played basketball very much. Love baseball, track. But they don't hit at you, as Paul Gaffney. That's why Paul Gaffney's a success. He should send half his salary to Tavaz. I mean, really, he should. He really should. But anyway. Just waiting for him to But really, I think it's very important that we recognize these young men tonight, the ones who are here. And I feel badly that Michael couldn't be here because Kevin is unable to be here. I feel bad that Michael Arruda and Michael Tavaz on here, and Mark Cordero. I mean, obviously, Mark Cordero was a wonderful quarterback, but he also played defense and kicked off and did a few other things for us, too. But Bobby Sylvia has promised to say a few words, and again, Bobby, brevity is next to godliness. Remember that. Remember that.
I really don't have much to add. I think tonight we got a very good sense of what it was like to play on our team from Mike and Jerry. Tonight is a night of celebration, but for me it really isn't records or touchdowns or, unfortunately, Mike, not your shot put yardage, but for me it's truly a celebration of the friendships and the relationships that remain strong through the years. I mean, I look at Dave Spatch and Paul Gaffney, and I grew up with these guys 20 years ago, and I haven't seen them in many, many years, but, we can pick it up and start talking as if it was, 2 days ago, and I think that's the beauty of the game of football and the experiences that we shared together. So, very, very quickly, I know brevity, but I had the opportunity this week. I was traveling to talk to a guy who was captured in Vietnam and spent 6 years in the Hanoi Hilton, and one of the main things he said was what kept him alive in his 8x8 cell was the fact, the strength that he got from his coaches, his staff, and his community, and it kept him alive, and kept him alive, and kept a guy by the name of John McCain alive. So what these people do in this room, what these coaches do with this room, what these administrators do in this room, which some people can look at and say Dartmouth pride, yeah, it's kind of a pain in the neck. But you know what? As I have 2 kids growing up in Dartmouth and what I've learned through the years, what happens in this town is very, very important. And I'd like to thank everyone for that. Good night.
Just to recognize these young men, and please hold your applause, if we could just kind of have you see them as they come up. You all know Michael McGuire, of course. Jerry Pimentel, of course. Kevin Estrella, a great player, probably one of our unsung heroes. Kevin. Gary Barboza. Rick White, a great coach, Rick White, absolutely. Gary, love you. Carlos, who came in late with his girl, Carlos Oliveira. Grand entrance. Do you notice that? Grand entrance. Richard Phillips, Ricky. David Spatch. Paul Gaffney. Oh, gee, get him. Get him off the...
You can't... I can't stand next to this man and not say, you can't talk about me 5 times and not let me say anything. We had a fantastic football team. And in the middle of the season, the Standard Times talked to Carlin and said, how are you doing? And he said, don't talk to me now. Talk to me in 20 years. Which would be about now.
That's right. Almost.
And the Standard Time said, well, how are you doing? Coach said, talk to me in 20 years. Said, I'm not in the business of creating sports heroes. I'm in the business of creating good men. Talk to me in 20 years about whether I've created a crop of good men. And I think that this man has created a crop of good men. And for that, I applaud you.
Thank you. Pat Bro, who is our real unsung hero of the team. John Costa, John. Johnny. Jay Fernandez, who's improved. Is this guy good looking or what? And David Santos. Before we break up, Paul, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit. In the yearbook, if you look at the yearbook, your yearbook, seniors, I kind of thought this was important, and I kind of wrote it in there. And for all the athletes tonight, Beth and Jim and Pam, people who aren't here, to Mr. Faria, the victories and the defeats will eventually be put in the deep recesses of your mind. But the everyday challenges of competition, sacrifice, and unity will be the cornerstones of your life. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you very much for coming.